The dream of being rich. That stuck with me, and that stuck with me for a long time. And the reason why I find it pertinent today is that we have an entire generation, and in my mind, generations of young men that are really having a hard time finding their way, finding a purpose, finding a goal, finding a reason, finding motivation, finding perseverance, being able to handle rejection, failure, etc. And I believe that the reason for that goes back to the answer to that question. And that is, I want to be rich. So I have an interesting story for you that kind of, I think, relates to the overall situation that we're going through right now in the United States. And the story goes back to, as always, most of my stories do, to being a dad, to being a father, and trying to answer a question for one of my kids, and really having to take the time to search to come up with the right answer, and also to understand why the question was asked in the first place. I'm Roy Arthur, and once again, this is my unbelievable reality. So the question was, I remember, and this is a little while ago, my son is now a sophomore in college, but I remember when my son was a freshman in high school, and he'd made the varsity basketball team, which was a pretty extraordinary thing considering how he was a freshman. But anyway, I remember picking him up one night after practice. We were on our way home, and I said to him, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And his answer rocked my world because it was twofold. First of all, his first response was, I want to be rich when I grow up. I want to be rich. And then his second one was, I want to play in the NBA. The second question was one that was relatively easy for me to dispel, given the fact that, genetically speaking, short of the fact that he was never going to reach 6'10", that he was Caucasian and had a vertical of about 26 inches on his best day, the odds of making the NBA were pretty slim. I did mention to him, however, he could make possibly a Division II college basketball team and therefore pay for his college through a scholarship if he worked really hard. And that meant he had to work harder than everybody else that he knew in every league he was in, every high school team he was in, and pretty much everywhere he went. Needless to say, the dream of being an NBA basketball player didn't make it past the cut, so to speak. But the dream of being rich, that stuck with me, and that stuck with me for a long time. And the reason why I find it pertinent today is that we have an entire generation, and in my mind, generations of young men that are really having a hard time finding their way, finding a purpose, finding a goal, finding a reason, finding motivation, finding perseverance, being able to handle rejection, failure, etc. And I believe that the reason for that goes back to the answer to that question. And that is, I want to be rich. Think about that. There was a time in this country where if you asked a young man what he wanted to be, there would have been numerous answers to that question. Oh, I want to be a professor. I want to be a college teacher. I want to be an airplane pilot. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be in the Army. I want to be president of the United States. I want to be a movie star. Etc. But now if you ask most of our young kids, most of our youth, most of the people in their 20s that are struggling and stuck, what they wanted to be, the answer would be a high percentage of them would say, I want to be rich. Because, see, if you really take the time to study capitalism and how it truthfully functions and how we only reward people that can prove their worth through monetary value, then you understand why our kids who are being fed a steady diet of propaganda from the Kardashians to Real Life to, I mean, God almighty, think of all of the shows. Think of all the lifestyle things. Think of all the social media, all the content influencers, all the pretend influencers, all of the artists that make millions and millions. And our children are being raised to believe that the only value that they actually have in the world is through how much money they have. That's it. I mean, if we distill it down and really think about the value system that we are teaching, that we are showing our children, that our society is embedding in our children. And that is this mythical dream of being the billionaire, the rich guy, driving the nice car, having the hot chick. Don't mean to be misogynistic in the slightest, but literally, this is the picture that Hollywood paints. This is what we see all around us with the supposed successful people in life. And this is what kids dream of. But here's the problem with that. Number one, our education system isn't built to create free thinkers, entrepreneurs, and folks that can rise to the top. Our educational system, K through 12, specifically is designed to churn out low IQ workers. Because our educational system was built in the late 1800s and the early 1900s to provide workers for the Industrial Revolution. Think about that. Our education system was built to provide workers during the Industrial Revolution, to teach kids to get out of bed, to go to work, to answer to authority, to complete assignments, i.e. tasks, to take specific breaks, to be told when to sit, when to stand, etc. To be formed into perfect workers that were already indoctrinated into a world where they would go get a 9-to-5 job, which is really similar to an 8-to-4 education. And then colleges just followed that path. I mean, think about how many kids are going to come out. And see, I keep going back to higher education. Higher education is really just big business nowadays. Let's get real. The majority of kids that graduate from high school or college, the statistic today, 70% of first-year graduates are unemployed. 70%. They've got $100,000 into debt on average to graduate from a four-year institution only to not have a job. And this is pre-AI. Because the employment rate was skewed before the AI revolution really started fucking things up. Because people were able to find entry-level jobs, i.e. bank tellers, cashiers at convenience stores, service industry, restaurant, hospitality, who checks you in at the hotel. There were entry-level jobs, receptionists, first-year assistants, administrative assistants, etc. You see what I'm saying? There were entry-level jobs into the corporate culture that was structured to keep you specifically climbing one ladder, of which only a rare few ever make it to the top of the ladder. And those rare few usually get to the top of the ladder, as much as I hate to say it, through nepotism and family intergenerational wealth. Starting out in life rich, coming from a rich family, gives you a distinct advantage in everything that's going to come thereafter. You can do the research on that on Google. It takes all of a matter of minutes. But this is the point that I'm trying to get to here as a father of four with a newborn late in life. So I am going through the revolutions of the wheel one more time in a society and a time that I am completely unfamiliar with, in a set of circumstances that are evolving and changing so rapidly, I have no idea, nor can I possibly conceive of what the world might be like for my little child in 18 years. I can hardly conceive of what this world is going to be like for my sophomore in college in 2 years. Which is why I have persuaded him to switch his major to something a little bit more broad-based. I'm not going to go into the details of his education. That's not for public consumption. But the point is that doing the research that I do, I was able to give him a better direction as to where he might go, hoping that I am correct, or at least 50% correct, and it's good enough. But only the universe truly knows what this world is going to look like. Capitalism at one time worked. It did. For the masses. Not for the rich. Capitalism has always worked for the rich. Make yourself aware of the fact that the Constitution was written by 50 white men, of which 37 were slave owners, and specifically written in such a way that their rights and their authority and their power was almost impossible to usurp. They did throw a bone to the common man, i.e. freedom of speech, but go make a fucking living on freedom of speech. There are a few that can, not very many. Richard Pryor, Robin Williams, just a few. See, I dated myself. But the Constitution was written for the rich in such a way as to pretend like the rich would not become the next aristocracy, but they have. We have an aristocracy in the United States of America, and we always have. In addition to that, the United States was the last freewheeling opportunity for true empire building and colonialism. If you think about it. A vast, wide open continent full of possibilities. All they had to do was get rid of the native inhabitants once they discovered that they made terrible slaves. I'll bet you didn't know that. We would have enslaved the Native American population. There would probably be a whole lot more of them living in the United States of America, except that they refused to accept slavery. They would rather die than do it. So we imported blacks from Africa, and that's just a fact. The country's wealth was built on slavery. There's no doubt about it. If you are not smart enough to do this much historical research, this much, to prove that fact, then don't ever bother commenting or sharing your opinion with anybody that's even slightly enlightened. It's a waste of time. But capitalism, as I was saying, did work for a period of time. It began in the Great Depression with FDR's New Deal, after Hoovernomics collapsed entirely because he raised tariffs and further destroyed an already eroded economy. In addition to that, he had a little thing called the Dust Bowl that he had to contend with and had no idea what to do about that because these were a bunch of rich white guys that had never seen the Midwest. I sidebar, but it's true. Tariffs did not solve the Great Depression. They made it worse. And tariffs are originally what brought on the Great Depression in the first place. The Gilded Age in the 20s, which is so often referred to, actually lasted from 1880-ish with the end of the fur barons, Waldorf, Astoria, J.P. Morgan, the Rockefellers. All these dynasties began during that time on the back of others' labor. Period. The end. Capitalism worked during the New Deal because FDR found a way to put people back to work and gave workers a living wage and rights to form unions. Unions protected workers up until the late 70s when the Republican administration began to dismantle unions because unions cost too much money. This is also in the 80s when we began to offshore, et cetera, et cetera. I could do a whole other podcast, which I'm going to do, on the truth about capitalism and why we are facing the late stages of a dying capitalistic empire. The evidence which is all around us is self-evident. We hold these truths to be self-evident, said Abraham Lincoln. And we live in a time when it's so hard to see truth. But our children are being raised with the dream and the reality that the only way they have value is by being rich. But our education system gives them no foundation for which to accomplish that task. Think about it. They want to be rich. They want to be Bezos. They want to be Zuckerfucker. They want to be Musk. They want to be Thiel, whoever, pick a billionaire. But we do not prepare them in any way to do that. We do not prepare our children to be entrepreneurs. Small business in the United States of America was built by entrepreneurs. Those outliers that decided to try their own thing. Over the last 20 years, it's become corporatized. Look around the United States right now. Think about this one aspect. Think about the mom and pop diner and then think about fast food. Specifically fast food chains that are all owned by corporations. The spirit of entrepreneurialism in the United States is a dying thing. Because I know as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, a successful business owner of over 20 years, built my own publishing business literally off an idea and $10,000, which I borrowed from somebody else my parents did not give me and I had to pay back. True story. Is it any wonder why our children are struggling so much right now in this time? Is it any wonder why our young men are so lost, so confused, so scared, and still living at home, so angry at women, so angry at minorities? That anger's got to go somewhere when my dream is to be rich and I can't get rich. I must blame someone for that. The irony is that we never blame the rich. who are making it that way. Because their propaganda and their messaging is so deeply entrenched in our national psyche that we blame the poor. And we blame ourselves when we've been fighting a rigged game all along. It's only a rare few of us that have actually figured it out. Think about it when you're struggling with your kids. Think about it when they ask you these when you ask them life questions, and ask yourself as a father, are you doing that? Do you really sit down with your kids and say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And listen, and then say, this is a good direction to go in? By the way, the whole freewheeling culture of the 80s, 90s, and 20s of you can be whatever you want, and let Johnny try whatever he wants until he finds what works. Fuck all, folks. Generational wealth don't work that way. It don't work that way. You find a kid's aptitude and you drive him in the direction of that aptitude. You kill the dreams of obscure things like being in the NFL or being in the NBA. For 99.999999999% of kids that try that, they will fail. And if they wasted years of their lives trying to achieve the goal that's unachievable, and their parents didn't have the balls to tell them, Johnny, you're not going to make it, the onus is on us for not doing it. Sit down with your kids now. Find out where their true interest lies. What are you good at? Go online and pull up an aptitude test and have them take one. There's several good ones. I don't advocate for a single aptitude test. There's several good ones out there. Have your children take an aptitude test at home so you as the parent can see where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, and do a better job of being a parent. And the job of being a parent, if you didn't fucking know, is to be a guide. To guide them through the beginning of their life, of which you will only be able to influence for 20% of their life. So during that time, you better be a good fucking guide, or your kids aren't going to go anywhere. Because they'll never know that there's even a trail there. Think about that. Really think about it. Before I go, I always like to do a literary reference. I just started reading this, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff. This is an obscure book. Didn't get a lot of press, didn't get a lot of coverage. This is breathtaking. It's from 2019 was when she published, so it's a little dated. But it goes into the beginning of Google and Yahoo and Amazon and on and on and on, and Microsoft and Facebook, and how they have surveillance capitalism. The gathering and selling of our personal data has created an entire new form of capitalism that we are not prepared for. We do not understand. We have not given permission for them to use our data, and our legal system is not equipped to cope with or challenge what has already happened. The growth of AI is built on the back of surveillance capitalism. I'm only a third of the way through this book. It's a heavy fucking read. Anyway, I'm Roy Arthur. Once again, this is Unbelievable Reality Podcast. Check me out on Instagram. Check out our shorts if you don't have the attention span for 25 minutes. Look forward to the next episode because there surely will be one. Please leave comments, give suggestions, bring up topics. And if you're a man looking for help and lost in your life, reach out. Send me a message. I can help you.